Welcome back, Ravens fans. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report, and this is going to be part two of our free agent series where we take a look at some potential free agents that the Ravens could look to sign this offseason. Now, in this installment, we're going to take a look at some of the available wide receivers that will be on the free agency market and trying to figure out if there are any potential targets for the Ravens or are they simply too much of a luxury for our organization at this point. Now, we're of course going to hit on some of the big names, just like we did in part one of the series where we discussed the running backs. And I'm also going to give you some options that I feel will fit the Ravens' needs more and make more sense from a cap perspective. With all that being said, let's dive in. So, like I did with the running back video, I'm going to start with some of the more expensive and therefore less likely options, followed by some more realistic options that could actually see the Ravens putting themselves in play for. Now, a disclaimer here as I'm recording this before the end of the franchise tagging window has closed, so some of these names may not be available, but that doesn't seem to be the case with a lot of these guys at this time. So, we're going to start with the top most projected and most expensive option, Mike Evans. Mike Evans is projected to receive around $23.8 million annually on a 4-year deal worth up to about $95 million. Now, I can't argue that Mike Evans is the best free agent wide receiver available. Having said that, even if the Ravens signed Matabike and made his cap hit nearly nothing this year, in addition to restructuring several players' contracts and cutting guys to save money, they would still not pursue a wide receiver contract this big. Yes, they did make a big splash last year for OBJ, but how much of that was for Lamar and how much of that was to try and jumpstart this passing attack with Todd Monken? Also, $18 million and $23.8 million are not the same thing. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't worth it. I've been on the OBJ was worth the price since the deal was first struck, but even so, I can't pretend that Zay didn't outperform him, and in many occasions, so did Likely and Aguilar, all of which are going to be returning in 2024. Now, let's get back to Evans. He put up great numbers as usual this past season, notching another plus 1,000 yard season with a total of 1,255 yards off 79 receptions and 13 touchdowns. He's also certainly in better playing shape than Odell was coming off of a year off of football, but Evans still tends to get banged up throughout the season every once in a while. Now, he didn't miss a game this past season, and with 10 seasons straight with over 1,000 yards, and 5 of those years he had over 10 touchdowns, it's extremely impressive and consistent. Now, whoever is getting Mike Evans is absolutely getting a stud, but I'm sorry, it's not the Ravens. Also, please not the Chiefs. If they get him, I will be mad. Anyway, moving on to the second most expensive option, Michael Pittman. Now, Pittman is just under Evans for a projected contract value at $22.7 million annually and a 4-year deal worth $91 million, or just under 91. At 26 years old, he has less wear and tear when compared to Evans, but he also has proven less. 4 years in the league, and he has only 2 seasons with over 1,000 yards. He was close in 2022 with 925, but the touchdown production has just not really been there, amassing just 15 touchdowns over his whole career, with 4 in each of the last 2 seasons. Granted, Pittman might think his quarterback room is more like the Defense Against the Dark Arts posting at Hogwarts, with how many guys have thrown to him over his career so far. Let's take a quick count. Minshew, Richardson, Foles, Ellinger, Ryan, Wentz, and Rivers. That's 7 in 4 seasons. It's hard to have chemistry with the guy under center keeps changing. Even if I give him the benefit of the doubt, though, and say he will earn the contract projected for him, I cannot see the Ravens being the ones willing to pay that. Now, our last expensive option that the Ravens will be skipping over is Calvin Ridley. Ridley showed out this past year in Jacksonville, reeling in 76 receptions and just cracking over 1,000 yards with 1,016 and adding 8 touchdowns. While he was certainly considered a top target going into 2023 for the Jags after serving his 1-year suspension, Ridley's production was a bit of a question mark, as well as how he would fit in with the current number 1 receiver Christian Kirk and the number 1 target getter in Evan Ingram. The answer was very well, in fact, and probably better than Jags fans dreamed. After Kirk went down for the season, Ridley took over, and between him, Ingram, and Etienne, they practically were the offense for Jacksonville. I like Ridley's game, and I think he's absolutely a weapon that the Ravens could use. But with a projected deal of 4 years worth $68 million and $17 million annually, I don't see the Ravens biting on him at this point. But who knows? And maybe the Ravens will surprise me. I wouldn't hate it, that's for sure. But now we're going to take a look at 2 options that I could realistically see the Ravens taking a swing at. The first, and more expensive option, is Gabriel Davis. Davis has had a successful start to his career after being drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the fourth round of the 2020 draft, mainly acting as the second or third receiver sometimes to Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley. But in 2022, he saw his stock and targets rise as he took full advantage of becoming Josh Allen's deep threat and almost a forgotten guy in coverage, where he seemed to find soft spots or lose his man during the play. His numbers took a jump after 2021, and he became the number 2 receiver, seeing 93 and 81 targets with 836 and 746 yards in 2022 and 2023, respectively. Each of those years, he hauled in 7 touchdowns as well. In fact, from 2020 through 2023, he has had 7 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, and 7 touchdowns. So it's safe to say that he knows how to find the end zone. And if anyone remembers the Bills and Chiefs AFC Championship game from a few years ago, where he caught 3 touchdowns in the game, I'd say the big stage is not too big for him either. In fact, over the past 2 years, he's played in 4 playoff games where he's amassed 18 receptions on 26 targets, which is a 69.2% catch rated percentage, 389 yards, and 6 touchdowns. The projected contract for Mr. Davis is 4 years, $54.4 million, which is around $13.6 million annually. He's still a bit more pricey than I think the Ravens front office would prefer, so I think they might seek to get him on a 3-year deal, but DaCosta has shown that he's not as afraid to loosen the purse strings a bit. And considering we have Bateman, Zay, Aguilar already on the roster, Davis could be that missing piece over the top. My second and cheapest option is one that many Ravens fans know very well, and may also gag slightly a bit when they say his name. But you can't deny he's a good player. Tyler Boyd. Yes, I know, he's put us through some hard times before and he's broken our hearts, but there was also a large number of fans that wanted Antonio Brown to come to Baltimore, and I can't think of a current player I'd want less than Antonio Brown. At least Boyd plays tough football, and I can respect that. Drafted in the second round in 2016 by the Bengals and playing every season with them, he will for the first time be a free agent now at the age of 29. The good of signing Boyd is that you get a solid contributor on offense, as he hasn't had a season under 650 yards since 2017 when he missed almost half the season. And with a career catch percentage of 68.1, he has good reliable hands when going up for the ball. He isn't nearly as expensive as the other options on this list either, with a projected 3-year contract worth $26.1 million or an annual salary of $8.7 million. On top of all this, he's actually remained a really healthy player over the past several years, only missing time in 2018 and 2017. Now, the bad isn't necessarily that bad, it's just the reality of things. He's not a star, and while solid, he may be more like a Nelson Aguilar 2.0 rather than an OBJ type of signing. Not that Aguilar hasn't worked out, I love that he's back. And even though I said solid contributor, that's also sort of his ceiling, as his yards total has been shrinking every year since 2019, where he had 1,046 yards, then 841, then 828, then 762, and then last year 667. Now, I'm not making excuses for the guy, but adding T. Higgins in 2020 and Jamar Chase in 2021, it's going to kind of do that to you. In fact, since 2019, Boyd has hauled in 21 touchdowns, and since 2020 has been the most sure-handed target on the Bengals with a catch percentage of 70.5, compared to Higgins and Chase, which have had 63.8 and 65.8 respectively since joining the team. I know that neither Davis nor Boyd are going to move the needle much for most fans, but honestly, I feel like it should, as the consistency and team player nature of both of these guys is the kind of receiver the Ravens look for. The Ravens organization is not one that wants a me kind of guy, like a George Pickens, but rather prefers a we kind of guy, and that is proven in who Odell was when he was here and the sort of leadership he provided. Mike Evans would be great, and even Calvin Ridley would probably have a huge impact, but if you really look at how our team is constructed and how we aim to win games, it's not with big-name guys, but instead role players who perform when called upon and really buy into what the Ravens organization is all about. I really hope you guys enjoyed this take on the possible options that the Ravens could look into this offseason at the receiver position. If you guys have any other thoughts or opinions, I encourage you to pop them into the comment section below. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. So as always, stay safe out there and go Ravens.